Okay, good morning, Gideon. We are on back to the Gemara, Ches Amad Aleph, 108a, the very last line. Sorry, so the Gemara finished its discussion on the laws of reclining, and we went through that in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, all the details of the laws of reclining, and we saw the Rebbe's unique approach to that. The next page or a little bit of the Gemara discusses the laws of drinking the 4 cups of wine. We're going to learn that, and then learn the Shulchan Aruch on that. Then the Gemara is going to discuss the mitzvah, the obligation that one has to bring joy to the family on any Yom Tov, which includes making sure you have a meat and wine meal, making sure your wife has a gift. It's halacha. We're going to learn that from the Gemara. Then the Gemara is going to discuss the amount of wine to be drunk. And then the Gemara is going to go on for a couple of pages on I don't want to say superstitions, but something like that, where behaviors that have negative spiritual consequences. And then once the Gemara is done that discussion for about 3 pages, then the Gemara is going to get back to the order of the Seder, beginning with the first cup of wine and what to do in between each cup. This is the trajectory. So let's look at the last line.
Is it true that some opinions are that it just has to be a cheekful?
Oh, we'll learn that.
Right.
We'll learn all about that. How much you have to drink, but how much has to be in your cup is not the same.
Because if it's a revius, then it depends on the cup size.
Revius is an absolute measure, not a cup size. Revius is an absolute measure.
It's a percent. It's not a percentage.
Revius is a quarter of a log, but that's an absolute. It's an absolute number.
Yeah, it's not a quarter of the cup that you're.
No. Revius is an absolute measure.
It's like
Okay, we'll get there.
Specific.
Okay.
We're going to get there, God willing. It is a percentage. Revius means a quarter, but a quarter of a log, which is an absolute measure.
But we don't have logs today.
Okay, but we know what they are based on. Okay, we'll look at the Gemara. We'll get there. Yeah. Okay. Last line on Ches Amad Aleph. Last line of 108a. The way the Gemara flows into this is because the last statement on the law of reclining came from Rabbi Ben Levi. And as is often the case, the Gemara will quote more statements by the same scholar, especially if they're under the same topic. All right, so Rabbi Ben Levi said the law regarding the requirement for a attendant or a waiter to recline while eating the matzah. That was the passage they were quoted, right, where it says that if the attendant doesn't recline, he doesn't fulfill his obligation. Yeah. And then Rabbi Ben Levi makes a statement now about drinking the 4 cups of wine, which is linked to our discussion to begin with, because the Mishnah upon which this Gemara is analyzing had a number of laws. At first, the Mishnah said, make sure you have an appetite when you start your meal. Then the Mishnah said, make sure you shouldn't eat until you recline. And the Mishnah also said, even if the person is very poor, he should have 4 cups of wine. Those are the first halachas in the Mishnah. So Rabbi Ben Levi, who just commented on reclining, also comments on drinking wine. So let's go there. Is kind of the Gemara, what the Gemara is doing now. And then that's the Gemara does. The next page or so, it gets into the laws of the 4 cups of wine. So 4th word in the last line of Ches Amad Aleph, 108a. Rabbi Ben Levi. Rabbi Ben Levi further stated, he just told us a law about reclining, and now he's telling us another law. Namely, Noshim Chayavos Ba'arba Koisis Halalu. Women are obligated in the drinking of these 4 cups. Now that's unique, because as we know, any time-bound mitzvah, women are exempt from, including rabbinic ones. So even though the 4 cups of wine is rabbinic in nature, as a commemoration, as we'll learn this much later, the commemoration of the 4 expressions of redemption and other things that are in 4. We learned about those in the Shulchan Aruch and the talk. But it's still time-bound, in that you only drink it on X night. And it's a positive commandment. And women are exempt from all positive commandments that are time-bound. Yet, says Rabbi Ben Levi, when it comes to the 4 cups of wine, women are equally obligated.
Like Shabbos, or they are?
Sorry?
Shabbos.
Well, Shabbos they're obligated because Shabbos is a negative commandment. Thou shalt not work. And because, right? All negative commandments, all don't do's, women are obligated in.
I thought there were positive ones as well, though, but women took it upon themselves.
That's true about some things. Like, let's say, for example, shofar. There's no obligation for women to hear shofar. It's a positive mitzvah, it's time bound. Only sound the shofar next day. Yeah. So, but negative commandments, women are obligated in. thou shalt not work on Shabbos. And because they're obligated in the thou shalt not of Shabbos, they're also obligated in the thou shalt rest on Shabbos. Thou shalt enjoy Shabbos. But it's an outgrowth of the fact that they're obligated in the thou shalt not.
How does the wine work?
So the 4 cups of wine are rabbinic.
On Shabbos.
In other words, I thought there was some positive time bound mitzvah that women do.
But voluntarily.
But, well, I guess.
Like, for example, lulav or shofar. Sephardim actually won't even do the lulav. Sephardic women won't do the lulav, or don't do the lulav. It's a time-bound positive mitzvah, and they're worried about making a bracha in vain, or whatever, because they're not obligated actually to make a bracha. All right. Anyway, the point is that the wine and the 4 cups of wine are a time-bound mitzvah, and it's positive in nature. Drink 4 cups. It's a positive instruction. It's time-bound. It's only at the Seder night, and yet Rabbi Levi tells us that women are still obligated. Yeah. Why? He's explaining it's on top of Kuf Chesem Abayis, top of 108b, Sha'af Hein Hayu Ba'isei, because they too were part of the miracle. As the Gemara says elsewhere, we learned it in Saita, that it's in merit of the women of that generation that we were redeemed. So because they were part of the miracle, in fact, crucial to the miracle, therefore they too are obligated in the mitzvah of the 4 cups of wine, which is to commemorate the redemption that they were part of. And the same thing is true of Hanukkah and Purim. Even though Hanukkah and Purim, again, are rabbinic enactments that are time-bound, yet they are obligated equal to men because of their involvement in the miracles in both stories. In Hanukkah, the story of Yehudis, who killed one of the generals, and in Purim, of course, Esther. So likewise as well, because they were crucial to the Exodus from Egypt, they're obligated in the commemoration of that Exodus. Okay. Now, the Gemara is about to tell us, this is an example, we're learning in the Monday night series, how the Gemara works, how it's a conglomerate of conversations over time. So here is an example of that, where the Gemara is going to quote a statement from a earlier sage of the Gemara's era, earlier Amora, and then an Amora of a later generation is going to unpack it for us. Okay? So the first statement is, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Shmuel being one of the early generations, the first or second generation of the Amoraim, of the Gemara's era. So he said, which 1, 2, 3, 4 statements, and then the Gemara is going to unpack those 4 statements. So if you don't fully understand these 4 statements, that's okay. The Gemara is going to explain it for us. Yeah. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. You with me, Meir?
Yeah.
Okay, second line. Arba kaises halalu. These 4 cups of wine. Sarich shehei bahen. Law number 1 is they require kedei mezigas kais yafa, enough to dilute a nice cup, whatever that means. But let's just be clear, we're not talking about how much you drink, we're talking about how much is in your cup. So there has to be enough in it, right? So let's remember, the old wine, it was from the vat, it's very strong, it's too strong to drink. You dilute it, and the universal measure for dilution was a 3-to-1 ratio. So 1/4 pure wine and 3/4 water. That was the ratio. It's going to become relevant soon. That was the ratio. 1 over 3. Yeah, this comes up in halakha a number of times. So you have to have enough wine to be able to dilute a nice cup. What does that mean? Let's see. Okay. That's statement 1. Statement 2, shesa'on chai, if you drank it and you didn't dilute it, so you drank pure wine, kuf chesem beis, yeah, 108b. Yeah, they go, you have the one that goes left.
This one goes left.
Sorry, the other ones go right. So that's statement 1. You have to have enough wine in there to dilute it in a big cup. Or koisyof, a nice cup, whatever that means. Statement 2, shesa'on chai, if you drank it undiluted, so just pure wine, very strong, yotza, you fulfilled your obligation. The Gemara will unpack that. Statement 3, shesa'on bavas achas, if you drank the 4 cups of wine all in one shot. What does he mean in one shot? Either he means 2 different versions, Rashi Rashbam, or probably more versions. Either that means you took the amount of 4 cups and poured it into one big cup, So if each cup has to be a revius, that measure called the revius, or the nice cup, like you said earlier, if you have 4 of those into one big cup, one approach. Another approach that what he means here is you just drank all 4 of them in a row, as opposed to breaking them up as you're supposed to throughout the Seder. In either event, he says, again, it'll be unpacked, Yotza, you fulfilled your obligation. Right? So statement 1, you have to have enough wine in there to dilute it to a big cup, to a nice cup. Statement 2, you drank it without diluting it, fulfilled your obligation. Statement 3, you drank all 4 at one shot, also you fulfilled your obligation. Statement 4, if you poured out from your cup to give to your family, Yotze, you fulfilled your obligation. So long as you still have the required amount in your cup. Yeah, those are the 4 statements. So let's unpack them. Let's unpack them.
Right. As a question I didn't think over, and you were saying that when you make kiddush, after you drink in the kiddush cup, that kiddush cup is now, the wine is now pugum.
That's correct.
And if you're passing it to your wife, that's not drinking kiddush wine.
That's something we discussed here at this table. Yeah, he was present there when we learned that section. Yeah.
Is that the halacha?
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll leave it alone for now, but yes,
Okay.
Can refer back to the old classes there. But yeah. Okay, so let's unpack these 4 statements. Statement number 1 was, so this is Shmuel again. Rabbi Yehuda speaking the name of Shmuel being an early scholar of the Amoraic era, of the Gemara's era. So now we have a later generation, Rava speaking, who is of a later generation. So he unpacks the 4 statements. Statement 1 was Shasan Chai. Actually, statement number 2 was, he starts with statement number 2. Shasan Chai, if you drank it raw, that means to say undiluted. Yotze, you fulfilled your obligation. Amar Rava explains, Yedei Yayin Yotze, you fulfilled your obligation of drinking wine. But Yedei Chedus, the obligation to demonstrate your freedom, Lo Yotze, you didn't fulfill your obligation. Which means you fulfilled your obligation to drink wine, because technically you're drinking wine. But we learned this, and this is Rashbam formulates it in a similar way, which is part and parcel of the drinking of wine is that it has to be drunk in such a way that it demonstrates freedom. So if you're drinking wine that's so strong to the point that it's unenjoyable, so you're not demonstrating freedom. It's like drinking wine without reclining. Right? We fulfilled your obligation to drink wine, but the chedus element of the drinking, the freedom element of the drinking, that you didn't do because it's not good wine. It's undiluted.
It seems
too strong.
Yeah, it seems like they're saying that this is the di'evet.
Okay, good question whether you have to re-drink it or not. We'll get to that in the Shulchan Aruch.
Because you said like a pillar, it should be 3 times that amount of wine because that has to be diluted.
Correct. So now, but the statement that Shmuel said nonetheless, if you drank it raw, you fulfilled your obligation.
Right.
Which obligation did you fulfill? So explains Rava. You fulfilled your obligation to drink wine, because technically it's wine, but you haven't fulfilled your obligation of drinking wine in a manner of freedom, because you're not enjoying it. It's too strong to enjoy.
It's a problem though, because we learn that meaning is a prerequisite,
Oh.
and precondition to the mitzvah of.
So maybe they would apply here.
I think it would.
Okay, so we'll learn the Shulchan Aruch. We'll learn about that. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see from the Shulchan Aruch about that. Yes, but yes, good point. Yeah, in other words, if it's a prerequisite, if a prerequisite for the drinking of wine is that it has to be in such a manner that's freedom, then not drinking that wine should undermine the wine. And we'll learn about that. Yes, indeed, we'll learn about that.
You're saying that it's similar to meaning.
Yeah.
The wine needs to be
Yeah.
a nice cup. Maybe that's what it means.
We'll see in a second. Yeah, we'll see in a second what that is. Okay, so that was statement number 1. Statement number 2, which Rava is explaining now, is if you drank it, Shmuel said if you drink it raw without diluting it, you fulfilled your obligation. Explained Rava, you fulfilled your obligation of drinking wine, but not the obligation of drinking it in a manner of freedom. Okay. Now, the next statement Rava is going to explain for us is Sheson bevasachas. If you drank it all at once, right? Which you said there's 2 different understandings to drinking all at once. Either you pour them all into 1 cup of wine, all 4 cups into 1 big cup, or you drank 4 cups in a row consecutively. So Shmuel said, if you did that, you fulfilled your obligation. Rav says it should be Rava, as per the footnote on the side, because again, Rav is from the same generation as Shmuel, and this would be Rava later, which is, namely, Yedei Yayin Yotza, again, you fulfilled your obligation for drinking wine, because you drank wine now. Which obligation for wine did you fulfill by drinking 4 cups in a row? Not all 4 cups,
Right.
because you only drank 1. So you fulfilled that. Moreover, Rashbam said, we have a mitzvah, as we're going to learn, to bring joy to the Yom Tif, and part of that is to drink wine and eat meat. So that obligation you fulfilled, because if you drank 4 cups of wine in a row. But Yedei Arba Kaisis, the obligation to drink 4 distinct cups, La Yatza, that you didn't fulfill. All right, so we're qualifying the statements. When he said that you fulfilled your obligation if you drank raw wine, okay, you technically drank wine. So if you drank 4 cups of wine that was undiluted, you technically drank 4 cups, but you didn't do it properly because you missed the freedom element, because it's not enjoyable. Statement number 2, which said if you drank all 4 cups of wine at once, he said you fulfilled your obligation. Well, you fulfilled your obligation to drink 1 cup of wine, or to drink wine in general on Yom Tov, you're supposed to drink wine, but you didn't drink 4 cups because they were all at once. You only drank 1. Yeah.
This is also the theme of general versus specific. The general mitzvah, all encompassing, and then
Drink wine,
and then
but specifically to Pesach, you have to have 4, and they have to be 4 distinct cups.
Meaning,
That's correct. They have to be 4 distinct cups. Okay. So now the third statement was Hishkemehen Labanov Ulovnei Vesoi. If you gave from your cup to your sons and the members of your household, to your family, Yotze fulfilled your obligation. Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak explains from the later generations of the Amoraim, Vahu, and this is only true, the Ishti Ruba de Kosa, where I drank the majority of the cup. Okay, so this is important, and this is a little bit to your point, Mayor. So I have my cup of wine, yeah, and before I want to give to my family, it's not pogum, so I give it to them before I drink. Now, when I drink, 2 conditions. Number 1, there still has to be a revius of wine left, that measure, which we'll learn soon. Yeah. Now, so that when I drink, I'm drinking from a revius. And then, additionally, I also have to consume a majority of the cup, even though I gave some to my family. And that's what he's saying here.
So there is a distinction between drinking a revius and drinking majority of the cup?
Majority of the cup could be less than a revius, it could be more than a revius. Again, revius is a universal standard. Majority of the cup is a relative standard to how big my cup is.
Okay.
Right?
And
The
there
revius
are-
is the universal standard. It's about 3.5 fluid ounces, something like that.
Right.
3.8 fluid ounces, like
Right.
that. 4 ounces, let's just say.
majority of the cup, I think, goes to the mitzvah, that second definition of pogum, right? It has to be look like a full cup.
Related, yeah.
You're allowed to top it off.
You shouldn't top it off before you drink, after the bracha. Make a bracha and then you top it off before you drink. You're making a major interruption between the cup, the
Right.
bracha, and the drinking. A, B, my bracha was on this cup, not in the bottle, not in the wine that's in the bottle.
Right. No, but let's say you make the bracha, you drink, and then you top off, then you pass.
You can do that also, because in that way you're making it no longer pogum by doing that.
Right.
But then again, you're not really giving. Okay, you can do that also. Yeah. One more statement now, a few more lines to add to finish up this discussion here. Meisvei, the following challenge was presented. So the only of the 4 statements that wasn't unpacked yet is a statement which is that you have to have enough wine to be able to create a nice cup of wine out of it. That's what Shmuel said, right? Shmuel said you have to have enough wine essence, pure wine, so that you can dilute it to a kais yafa, a nice cup. Right? So the Gemara's assumption, at least according to one reading of the Gemara's assumption right now is that kais yafa, a nice cup, is not the same thing as revius. Otherwise, he would have said you have to have enough wine to make a revius out of it, which would mean a quarter of revius pure wine, 3/4 of revius water.
It would be a full cup.
What does kais yafa mean? What does a nice cup mean?
Depends on the size of your cup.
Right. So why didn't he say that? So what?
Full.
So you should have said Kedei Mizigas Kais Mole. You mean full cup.
Mm.
Kais Yafa is a strange formulation. Nice cup. What does he mean? But presumably, he's using that word distinct from Revius, distinct from the Revius, which is the ordinary measure for a cup of wine. Right? And therefore, with that thinking, the Gemara is going to raise the following challenge to Shmuel's statement. A challenge which comes from a text that predates Shmuel being from the early generations of the Amoraim, the early generations of the Gemara. We're now going to quote a text that comes from the Mishnaic era. And that text implies, or says straight out, all you need in your cup is a revius, which seems to differ from Shmuel, who said you have to have a nice cup, whatever that is. Yeah, we clear? Mm-hmm. So here's a challenge. Meisvei, the Gemara raises the following challenge by quoting a Mishnaic text. Quote, Dalad koises halal, these 4 cups, started shehebem today revius. There must be a revius of wine. Or enough for a revius, which would mean a quarter of actual wine and 3/4 of water. Okay? Echad chai, whether it's you're using raw wine that's undiluted. Echad mazog, whether you're diluting it. Echad chadash, whether it's a new wine, which maybe has not as good flavor. Echad yashan, or it's old wine with stronger flavor. It has to amount to a revius at the end. Right? After your dilution. The final product must be a revius. And Rabbi Huda adds, we're still quoting the Mishnaic text. So by tam umara yayin. When you dilute your wine, make sure you retain the flavor of wine and you retain the look of wine. It should look red. End quote from the Mishnaic era. So the Gemara now explains what its challenges. Kadani miyas, but we nonetheless learned in the statement kedei revius, that the end result has to be a revius. Ba'at amris, and you, Shmuel, said kais yafa, nice cup, whatever that is.
He's challenging Rabbi Buddhist.
Well, first of all, he's in Mishnah. He's in the Amoraic era, not post Mishnaic. He can't argue with a Mishnah. He could say, "Look, I have another Mishnah that backs me up." But either way, which is what the Gemara means to say here, Rabbi Buddha only makes a statement that at the end it should look and taste like wine. But everybody agrees it's got to be a revius.
He may be challenging. Rabbi Buddha may be challenging the 3-to-1 ratio when he said that, right?
Maybe
3-to-1. It only has to taste like wine, look like wine.
It has to at least taste like wine or look like wine, which maybe means at least taste like wine, look like wine, which means maybe he's being more lenient if you put the ratio of 5-to-1. So long as it looks like wine, tastes like wine, maybe
that's not really
maybe that's. But either way, exactly, because the Gemara says katani mios. At the end of the day, we learn that it's got to be a revius at the end, and everybody agrees with that. And you said kais yafa, nice cup, whatever that means. So Amri, it was said, therefore, as they're breaking their heads over the statement in the study house, they concluded, it must be that they're the same measure. That nice cup means a revius.
Right, they may not be. Nice may mean something else.
It should mean something else. Correct. Shmuel could not be arguing with the generations of the Mishnah, and we have no precedent for the Mishnah for any other measure other than revius. And therefore, Shmuel must mean revius when he says nice cup. So why are you formulating it that way? So explains the Gemara. So my kedei mizigas kois yafa. So what did it mean when you said that it's got to be enough for a nice cup? What did he mean? The Kamar that he said. This explains l'chol chad v'chad telehevelahu kula revius. You have to have enough wine. What do you mean by a nice cup is that you have to have enough wine essence so that you can produce 4 cups, each of which are going to be a revius. For the whole Seder, which means you have to have a full revius of non-diluted wine.
Right. So you can split it.
Split it 4 ways, and that's correct. And that's what he meant by a nice cup. This isn't the ordinary, you have to make sure at the beginning when you start out, you have a nice cup of undiluted wine so that you can produce from it 4 ordinary cups of revius. That's what he meant by nice cup. Nice cup meaning it's an original cup that's a revius from which you can produce the net result, revius wine. Okay? A little bit more. In analyzing the rest of this Mishnaic text, the second statement was, okay, so this settles Shmuel's little speech, but we got a lot of halachas out of this. We got that the primary way, first of all, we learned that your wine has to be diluted in order to fulfill the obligation of freedom. Your wine has to be to your liking, right? Because what did the Gemara say? The Gemara said that if you drink the wine undiluted, you fulfill the obligation of wine, but you didn't fulfill the freedom element. Why didn't you fulfill the freedom element? Because it's not wine that you enjoy. Implication being that if you drank wine that you don't like, you may have fulfilled your obligation for wine drinking, but you didn't fulfill your obligation for freedom because you don't like it. Kind of like the guy who drinks the non-diluted wine. So this is one halacha we derive from here. Another halacha we derive from here is that you don't have to drink the full cup, nor do you have to have the entire cup with you when you're drinking. You just have to have at least the majority of the cup you're drinking, right? Because you can give to your family before you drink, so long as you drink the majority, right? We also learned that you cannot drink all 4 cups at once, right? Because if you do that, you fulfilled your obligation of 1 cup, and you fulfilled your obligation to have wine at the Seder, but not the 4 cups of wine, right? And we also learned that you have to have the taste and flavor of wine, a flavor and look of wine. It's got to look like wine, and the flavor of wine, right? So you can't dilute it too much, right? So we're learning all these halachas based on this whole discussion. So says the Gemara. Rabbi Huda said, "Sort of shehei by tamumar." From the Mishnah we quoted earlier, from the Mishnah we just quoted earlier, said you have to retain the taste and the view and look of wine. Amar Rav explains, my time, what's the reason for Rabbi Huda? My time, Rabbi Huda, what's the reason for Rabbi Huda insisting it has to look like wine? Taste, I get it. It's got to taste like wine. Otherwise, you're not drinking wine if it doesn't taste like wine. Yeah. Why does it have to look like wine? Because the verse reads, a verse in Mishlei, Al tira yayin kis adim. Don't look at the wine as it's red. So the verse implying that the wine should retain the view of wine too, not just taste like wine. Okay, we'll stop over here, God willing. We'll stop over here, and God willing, tomorrow we're going to learn a little bit more of the Gemara. The next passage of the Gemara is still on this topic, and a little bit of a side topic, which is the idea of children involvement. The custom to have the kids steal the matzah, the custom to pick up the matzah. That's going to come up in a second, and we're going to see why it's related to the wine issue. And from there, we're going to go to the Shulchan Aruch, which discusses the wine as well as this detail involving the children. So we're going to learn the Gemara on this issue, and then the Shulchan Aruch will learn tomorrow. And B'ez Hashem, we will hear good news locally from our classmates. It should be, I've heard, a Fuah Shalema, and abroad, all the learning the Yidden are doing worldwide should stand in good merit for those who need it.
Amen. Thank you.
Good day, Yidden.